Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are tackling a crucial yet, frequently misunderstood phase of storytelling. We're going to look at exactly how to take a fragile little idea and build it into a structurally sound narrative foundation. Think of today's session as your architectural masterclass for storytelling.
Okay, let's dive into this incredibly high-stakes scenario. Picture this. You've just pitched your brilliant one-sentence logline. The person across from you leans in, their eyes light up, and they say, "Wow, that sounds amazing. Tell me more." What do you do next? Panic? Start rambling? Well, one thing is for certain, you absolutely do not reach into your bag and hand them a heavy 90-page screenplay right away. That is just way too much, too soon. Instead, you need a precise, engaging document that bridges that gap.
So here's our structural syllabus for today. From logline to story, what is a synopsis? Beginning, middle, and end. A synopsis in action, common beginner mistakes, and finally, refining your narrative.
Let's kick things off with Section 1. From logline to story, building the blueprint.
You see, every great film starts as a simple idea in Step 1. Then you compress it into a logline in Step 2. But Step 3, the synopsis, well, that's where the real heavy lifting happens. This is the vital structural step before the drywall of your screenplay goes up in Step 5. You really can't just skip from a logline to a script without risking a complete structural collapse. The synopsis is essentially your stress test.
Moving right along to Section 2. What is a synopsis? The core of your story. Here's the formal definition. A synopsis is a short summary of your entire story that explains what happens from beginning to end, introducing the main character, the conflict, and the resolution. Now, length is super important here. If you're working on a short film or, say, a student project, your synopsis might literally just be a single punchy paragraph, maybe a page at most. For a feature-length film, sure, it'll be slightly longer, but the goal is exactly the same. It has to be concise and complete.
And I love this analogy for figuring out how to write it, the campfire analogy. Imagine you're sitting around a campfire with your friends, telling them about a movie you just saw. You wouldn't describe every single camera angle, every line of dialogue, or, the color of the protagonist's shoes. Unless those shoes are magic, nobody cares. You'd only focus on the important emotional moments that actually push the story forward. That is exactly the tone and focus your synopsis needs to have.
So look at this sharp binary contrast between your logline and your synopsis. The logline is just one sentence. Its entire job is to create curiosity and answer the question, what's it about? But the synopsis? That's usually about one page. Its job is to provide absolute clarity and answer what actually happens. Basically, the logline hooks your listener, but the synopsis delivers the clear, undeniable narrative logic.
All right, on to Section 3. Beginning, middle, and end. Structuring the story.
Your one-page document absolutely must be structured by 3 specific acts. You've got your beginning, which hinges on an inciting incident. That flows right into the middle, defined by conflict and growth. And finally, the end, which brings resolution. I know it sounds simple, but you would be amazed at how many writers fail to clearly define these 3 distinct phases in their summaries. Let's break down the setup phase. Act 1. This is where you introduce your main character and their world. Who are they? Where do they live? What does their ordinary day-to-day life actually look like? You have to establish this baseline so that when you present the inciting incident, that massive, surprising event that changes absolutely everything, the reader really feels its impact. This incident is the exact spark where your story truly comes to life.
Then we hit Act 2, the middle. This is the longest, most intensive part of your blueprint. Your character is now facing new challenges and making incredibly difficult decisions. This is where the emotional journey happens, guys. When writing this section of your synopsis, ensure that every single obstacle you mention actively pushes the story forward. We don't want filler here. We want roadblocks, emotional growth, and escalating, undeniable conflict.
And that brings us to a really crucial point here in Act 3, the end. You must explain exactly how the story resolves. Do they succeed? Do they fail? What has fundamentally changed as a result of this whole journey? Please, listen closely to this one. A synopsis is not a movie trailer. You are not trying to avoid spoilers here. You have to include the ending because the entire purpose of this document is clarity, not suspense. Your reader needs to know if your narrative actually sticks the landing.
Let's look at Section 4, a synopsis in action, the Shepherd case study.
Here is our starting point. Our initial logline. An elderly shepherd struggles to preserve his family's traditional way of life as modernization transforms his mountain village. It's a great one-sentence foundational seed.
It definitely creates curiosity, but it doesn't tell us the actual story yet.
So watch how that single sentence expands into full story beats. First, we introduce the shepherd in his village. Then, we show the younger generations actively leaving for the city. We describe his specific attempts to keep the traditions alive, which naturally leads to presenting a huge emotional family conflict. And finally, we conclude with whether those traditions survive and what the family ultimately learns. Notice what we skipped here. We skipped the minor conversations, we skipped what the weather was like, we focused strictly on the key structural events that form one complete story.
All right, Section 5. Common beginner mistakes, avoiding the trapdoors.
Listen, a synopsis is simply not the place for dialogue, camera angles, or dense scene directions. You're not writing the script yet. And honestly, the biggest trapdoor? Ending your document with "to be continued." Literally, nothing frustrates a producer or a reader than a cliffhanger in a structural document. Instead, focus on the professional standard: character, conflict, journey, and resolution. Keep it clean and keep it focused.
Finally, Section 6. Refining your narrative. Professional insights.
I want you to read this quote and really let it sink in. If your story doesn't work in 1 page, it probably won't work in 90 pages. Guys, this is the cold, hard truth of filmmaking. Professional filmmakers discover their story problems right here while writing the synopsis. Structural problems absolutely must be caught on this single page long before any cameras roll, and way before you spend months writing a doomed screenplay.
Once you've mastered this, the next step of your blueprint is creating a treatment, which is just a slightly longer document to explore the tone and visual storytelling. But the synopsis, that's your ultimate testing ground. It lays that rock-solid foundation that makes the treatment and eventually the screenplay incredibly clear and focused.
Which leaves us with this final, vital question for you to take away today. Does your 1-page blueprint hold up, or will the 90-page house collapse? Seriously, before you write your next script, put your idea through the synopsis stress test. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer today, and I honestly can't wait to see the incredible stories you guys build.